People shape history, and history shapes us. Tonight, we'll once again cross the barriers of time to talk with one of the women who have helped change the way we live and think. Dateline, Savannah, Georgia, March 12, 1912. It was learned today that prominent local citizen Mrs. William Lowe is sponsoring a radical organization composed entirely of little girls. Was that the way it was, Mrs. Lowe?
Well, hardly. Your report is far more dramatic than the event, which I understand is a journalistic convention.
You were quoted as saying, "I have something for the girls of Savannah and all America and all the world." Isn't that a bit dramatic?
Perhaps. But as it turns out, I was right, wasn't I?
Touché, Mrs. Lowe. But you must admit your idea was a bit radical, defying the traditional roles for girls of your day.
Or you could look at it another way.
Oh, and that is?
Well, traditional roles for women were usually behind the times. I simply brought them up to date, where they should have been all along.
An interesting viewpoint.
After all, girl guiding was very successful in England. That's where I first saw what girls were capable of, and I just knew American girls would take to it as quickly as their English cousins.
And you were right.
A habit I try to cultivate.
I see. Well, let's take a look at the organization today in the United States. What do you think of your radical organization of little girls now that it's all grown up?
Well, Girl Scouting is far from grown up. See, I called it a movement because it's always growing and changing, being responsive to the needs of girls, helping them to be the best they can be at whatever they choose as they grow into women. And we'd best keep growing with them or find ourselves some other business, don't you agree?
I stand corrected, Mrs. Lowe. But tell me a little more about this organization of yours.
Oh, it's not my organization. It is our organization. Clever though I may be, I was first clever enough to know that I couldn't do it alone. An organization like the Girl Scouts of the USA needs the brain power, the creative talents, and life experiences of a wide and diverse group of people.
Including men?
Well, men, of course. We expect a lot more of them than just providing protection and lifting heavy objects.
I see. Just about a year after you started the first troop in Savannah, you opened a national headquarters in Washington, D.C.
That is correct. And in 1916, I moved it to New York City.
So I understand. But why a national headquarters? Typically, most organizations grow from the bottom up, establishing a national office to coordinate the efforts of many local units.
Yes, that is typical, but Girl Scouting isn't especially typical. You see, it's important that girls belong to the movement called Girl Scouts of the USA. They want and they need that wonderful feeling of being part of something big. It makes them an immediate participant in their national pride and heritage. It demands the best of their youthful idealism, and it gives them opportunities to express that idealism in ways that make them feel that they are important to their nation and to the world. Now, I'm sure it's wonderful to belong to the Girl Scouts of, Nutley, New Jersey, say, but you ask any girl if it's not more thrilling, more challenging to belong to the Girl Scouts of the USA.
Yes, I can see what you mean, Mrs. Lowe. It was in May 1917, I believe, that you personally signed the charter for the first Girl Scout Council.
Toledo, Ohio. I hope they're still as proud of that charter as I am. That was a great step forward for Girl Scouting.
Why is that?
Because the chartering process made it possible to keep Girl Scouting growing without growing an enormous bureaucracy to boot. I knew Girl Scouting would grow, but I must admit I had no idea how quickly. Just 1 year after I began the national organization, Girl Scout groups were popping up all over the country. Now, how could we be sure that every girl, wherever she was, would get the very best Girl Scouting had to offer?
That's when you came up with the idea of Girl Scout Council.
That's right, and the charter.
My notes say the charter is essentially an agreement between the council and GSUSA, articulating the rights given to the council and the obligations it must meet to be a Girl Scout council.
In a nutshell.
And what of the obligations of GSUSA?
Oh, well, they are plentiful, and they're important to my scheme of things. You see, I wanted the skills of the national headquarters to be devoted to fostering the interests of Girl Scouting everywhere. Its primary obligation is to provide councils with a Girl Scout program, along with the help and the tools they need to do their part of the job. I thought it was the best of both possible worlds, each with a unique role in fulfilling a common purpose. And their obligations don't always remain the same, you know. Just as we're continually changing the Girl Scout program to meet the needs of each generation of girls, well, so's the way we respond to council needs. They, too, are always changing.
But as I understand it, the reasons for chartering councils and the requirements for retaining a charter have changed very little since 1917.
Well, in a way that's true, yes, but the process, the tools, the length of the charter period have changed many times over the years. However, one thing remains constant.
What's that?
The National Board's concern about the effectiveness of each Girl Scout council.
So let me see if I've got this straight. Girl Scout councils are, in effect, subsidiaries of the national organization.
Well, only if you consider the heart subsidiary to the head. Now, each has its separate function, and each from time to time likes to believe that it's more important than the other. But I know I wouldn't be the same without both working together.
An amusing analogy, Mrs. Lowe, but perhaps you could be just a bit more specific.
Oh, please forgive my occasional flights of fancy, sir. Let me put it in somewhat more down-to-earth terms. Imagine, if you will, a circle.
We can do better. How's this?
Wonderful. Well, at the top arc of the circle, there is the National Council, which is the organization's governing body, made up of elected delegates from all Girl Scout councils everywhere.
I see. That's the link between Girl Scout councils and the national organization.
Exactly right. Now, the National Council elects the National Board of Directors. And put them on the right side there, please.
Certainly.
Thank you. The National Board, in its turn, charters Girl Scout councils. That's perfect. And the board appoints the National Executive Director to manage the day-to-day business and to see to it that councils get the services they need.
Representative democracy.
Oh, yes.
Plain and simple.
That's right. And each Girl Scout council is structured along the very same lines. You see? See, I think of it as our declaration of interdependence.
Ma'am?
The national organization and Girl Scout councils are each an interdependent part of the Girl Scout movement. Each needs the other to carry out its responsibilities, and the movement needs both working together.
I think I've finally caught on, Mrs. Lowe. So tell me, how does this interdependence work?
Like clockwork, of course. For example, what do you think makes Girl Scouting what it is?
You mean the world's largest voluntary organization for girls?
Well, that's a bit grander than what I had in mind, but it'll do nicely. It is the Girl Scout program that attracts and holds girls. That is what we are about. And I doubt that we'd be the world's largest organization for girls if the program ever failed to meet the expectations of each new generation of girls.
Your Declaration of Interdependence makes it work.
Our Declaration of Interdependence makes it possible to keep the Girl Scout program responsive to the needs of girls everywhere, which is the primary responsibility of the national organization. You see, from its wide viewpoint, the national organization can see how well the program is attracting and holding members nationwide, and update the program as necessary.
Very logical.
Testing and refining new ideas with the help of councils, and then sharing the results with all Girl Scout councils, along with the information, the promotional and educational materials necessary to make it work.
Which is the council's responsibility.
Well, you are catching on.